Welcome to the Greenroom, a new podcast series by Sustainable Buildings Canada designed to help the building industry stay informed about the latest trends and techniques for building more sustainable buildings. I'm Jeff Fredericks, and I'm live at the 2022 Green Buildings Festival in downtown Toronto. Well, our first guest today is Mike Singleton. He's the Executive Director of Sustainable Buildings Canada. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Happy to have you. I'd love to start to get your sort of take on today's festival and its importance in the world we live in right now, and the urgency to get at climate change.
Yep. Thank you, and thanks, Jeff, for doing this for us. Urgency is a great word to use. Our theme this year is positive, and certainly we all need a bit of positivity coming out of COVID for 2 years. But positive as it applies to buildings in this case is the kind of the concept of net positive energy, net positive greenhouse gases, and buildings that contribute rather than use our resources, and so contribute to society in that manner. So highly efficient, comfortable, great indoor air quality, and so on. This is what our speakers have been talking about today. The concept of deep energy retrofits. So when you talk about urgency, we are in a climate crisis. That's not news to anyone, I don't think. So we have to do something about that, and buildings can be part of that solution. But we have to start with retrofitting buildings, and we need to do it quickly. And so we've had some speakers here today talking about conceptually how to do that. We have some examples that have actually been done, but really when it comes to urgency is we need a multiplier effect. We need to do what's been demonstrated, but we need to do it thousands, in fact millions of times. And we don't have a long time to do that. We have some ambitious goals that the federal government has laid out for 2030 and 2050 and so on, but we need to get on that pathway right away. And so I think that's, it's inspirational what we're hearing about, but now we need to really embrace that challenge.
And a conference like this is an opportunity, of course, to gather ideas from all over the place, including around the world, really, on some of the best practices, and sharing knowledge is, I guess, one of the key parts of getting at this work quickly. In your opinion, how important is it that more of these sort of conferences are happening so that we are, in fact, exchanging information?
Yeah, I think there's a need not only to kind of spread the knowledge, but it's also, and one of our things has always been inspiration. So we've got a lot of the professional community here today. They need to be inspired to, take these ideas, embrace them, and go away and implement. And so, the more we can spread the word, whether it's through conferences or web-based activities, workshops, and so on, that's great. But people need to not just leave here and go away and think, oh yeah, that's cool, but how does it affect me and what can I do about it? They need to leave here and go and take that to their practices and think about new ways of doing things. Think about how we might fix up this aging building stock, and for new buildings, think about how we can really quickly get them to those net zero targets. Because while there's urgency for, in particular the existing building stock, we also need to think about new buildings. Something new is going to last 50 or 75 years. We need to ensure that building is immediately achieving those longer term targets, because that's not something you're going to retrofit in 10 years typically.
Well, it's interesting. One of the speakers that we had join us spoke on behalf of the city of Oslo and shared some of the ways in which they have approached electrifying even construction sites, in the way in which work gets done is in some cases as important to what's being built, right? Because if we can reduce the impact of the construction phase. That can go a long way. What was one of your kind of key takeaways from that presentation?
Well, I think, I hate to say it, but construction, sort of typical construction, if you will, can be quite wasteful. And you look around construction sites, there's often very clear evidence of that. So I think the need to think about construction in a holistic manner and set out those goals at the beginning, and then get, there's hundreds of trades potentially involved, and professionals and so on, and everyone has to kind of buy into that vision and think about how they can implement it in what they do on a construction site. I think the other thing that we need to remember, not lose sight of, is this concept of embedded carbon.
Yeah.
So the carbon that is in actually the materials that are being used, that can be quite a significant source of greenhouse gases. So we need to think about ways where we can minimize those carbon impacts with the construction materials as well.
Great. Well, and I know, when it comes to deep retrofits, and you're very passionate about this topic, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in, I guess, convincing the owner-operators to do the full meal deal, right? I mean, to actually make that commitment. Is there anything you can share with us about how we go about, I guess, getting those owner and operators to kind of sit down, make these big commitments?
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest challenges. We hear all the time about, buildings are in portfolios and are investments, and there's turnover in that stock. So how do you motivate a portfolio manager to make the investments required to improve the stock? It's definitely a challenge. It's one of the things that we're trying to kind of come to grips with. There are incentives available, obviously, to offset some of those costs. I think you want to identify buildings within portfolios that kind of represent the sort of ideal retrofit, and we've had a speaker just talking about that from Dialogue, and sort of finding those buildings. But ultimately, the people the decision makers at those portfolios or those companies, they need to be supportive of that. So there's an educational activity that has to happen with them as well. The good news is a lot of companies are embracing the concepts of through ESG and so on. So they're thinking about how they might deal with this situation, in particular with greenhouse gas reductions. There's large federal commitments to this, and I think people are more aware of it than they were 10 years ago, and so this is in the vernacular now. People understand that we have to do something, that climate change is now at a crisis, and so I think the savvy building owners and portfolio managers will embrace those concepts, and will want to be seen to be doing something about it. And there are some examples of portfolios that are really embracing the idea and advancing those retrofit opportunities.
Awesome. I've got one last question for you, and it's about Sustainable Buildings Canada, and specifically the approach you guys take to in your workshops in terms of helping people get up to speed on the latest techniques. Tell me a little bit about the integrated design process and why that is, in fact, a really proven way of bringing people up to speed on the possibilities of moving stuff forward.
Yeah, so we embraced the concept, the use of integrated design from the outset. So we've been in existence for coming up 20 years now, and we've been working with this, promoting the use of integrated design. And over the years have done now over 600 design workshops where we look at specific projects, and we bring in a team of subject matter experts who can assess the envelope, the mechanical system, the windows, the other uses in the building, and so on, and look for ways to improve those things, i.e. lower energy use and greenhouse gas emissions, through the smart implementation of new technologies and design options. But the beauty of it is that these are not done as one-off activities. They're done in an integrated, with an understanding of the integration of these technologies. So what you do with the windows and the walls affects the lighting and the mechanical loads. And so that's important, that you get the people that are the design professionals who are making decisions around those either technologies or designs, that they kind of understand how their decision affects somebody else's. And when you work together, you take advantage, and you get the sort of synergistic effects that occur when you put all those people in the kind of together on a design challenge. The other thing we do at the workshops, which is really critical, is energy modeling. So we are able to assess, as kind of an educational activity, what a building might use in terms of natural gas and electricity, for example, and then we look for ways through the expertise that we bring to the table to really lower those loads. And it's an iterative process typically, but we have found in our experience that you can realize dramatic reductions in energy and greenhouse gas emissions through the use of integrated design. So as an example, and since we're talking more about retrofits today, we regularly apply the integrated design to deep energy retrofit project scenarios, and we've demonstrated 50 or 60 or 70% reduction in energy use through the application of, in this case, we're not changing a lot of the design of the building, but through the application of new technologies in a manner that is integrated.
Right.
And so those are really exciting results, and that's what we need to do to all our buildings to achieve these targets.
Get all the best minds together, get them in a room, tackle the problem collectively, and as you say, the results sort of speak for themselves.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay.
Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
All right.